Welcome to the SoLoMo Show, a weekly podcast hosted by Corey O'Brien, the social media strategist at Heat and author of thefutureofads.com.
And I'm Adam Helway, CEO of the digital marketing agency Secret Sushi Creative.
Each episode, we discuss topics, trends, tactics, and tools related to social, local, and mobile marketing and advertising. Our goal is to give you the information you need to be a better marketer. Today is Wednesday, May 29th, 2013, and this is episode number 71.
In this episode, we're going to discuss Yahoo buying Tumblr and how to get more likes and comments on Tumblr, the importance of verified accounts, rich pins on Pinterest, and much more.
Rich pins on Pinterest? That sounds valuable.
Yeah, we got tumbling all over the place with Tumblr, with a few things in regards to that. But how you doing, Corey? Today's Wednesday instead of Tuesday, huh?
It is. It's been a crazy couple weeks. I think I even talked about this in the last episode. Just been super busy with work stuff, and I think you had some stuff going on yesterday. So today is Wednesday. We're pushing it back a day.
Yeah, and as you can see, I'm still sort of incomplete. If you're watching the live stream, as you see behind me, I've got my green tape with my attempt to line up my pictures that I usually have behind me at the old place, and eventually I'll get to lining those things up. I have no clue how my wife did it so well, spacing 5 pictures out exactly and lining them up across an entire, because you got to drill the holes right, all that jazz. So in the end, hopefully, not too long from now, we'll actually look like we're not under construction anymore. So pardon my dust.
There you go. You'll have to do some sort of redecorating your apartment podcast that everybody can tune into.
Exactly.
All the exciting world of apartment decoration. Or, what you could do is start a Tumblr, because this episode we're going to have a lot of great Tumblr stats, including kind of kicking off the episode with another Dan Zarella post. So we actually included a post from him last episode as well, but he's been cranking out a bunch of good stuff lately.
Are you a Dan Zarella fanboy, Corey?
I am a Dan Zarella fanboy. I love, I like the information that he puts out. I love how he presents it. It's very clear. It's very concise. It's always based on actual data. It's not like, well, I read this study somewhere and I studied, I watched 4 people over their shoulder and now I'm just guessing this is how the rest of the internet uses it. It's like, no, I got, access to the fire hose. In the case of the Tumblr data that he's talking about here, he did a random sampling of 300,000 posts. So, you're getting some solid data when you're looking at 300,000 posts. This isn't like, oh, well, I looked at 10 and I averaged it out. It's like, no, I got a giant chunk of data. So I'm a fan of how he approaches data with specific regard to social media, kind of studying and learning and dissecting the various networks.
So what did he get out of it? What did he get out of it in this study this time?
So he was looking at Tumblr by the numbers. Basically, if you are a Tumblr user, how do you ensure that the types of content that you're creating and sharing is going to get the most interaction? And started off with just a very broad look at the types of things that Tumblr users share, and actually found that 83% of Tumblr posts are photos. Which does not leave much room for anything else, but basically 83% are photos, 9.6 are text, and 7.4 are in the other. And other includes things like video, there's actually chats you can put in there, there's quotes, all that sort of thing. And so, photos by far and away the most popular type of content on Instagram. But it's also interesting to see that those are, a popular type of content as well. So photo posts get the most notes, and a note is sort of Tumblr's way of tracking engagement. So if you like something or you sort of share it on your own Tumblr blog, that counts as a note.
It's almost like a track back a little bit, or ping back or something like that, the old school blog stuff, right?
Exactly. It's a track back or ping back, but it's actually more effective because it's all happening within one system. So they have a lot of control over, the number of notes being reported is extremely accurate. And so they took an average of the number of notes, and photo was, slightly above average, not hugely above average, but about 10% above average. Quote actually gets, roughly 5% above average. And then everything else is below average. Chat, video, audio, text, links, all those being below average. And then answer, which is basically, I'm trying to think of the service that offered this, but you can ask a question of a Tumblr user, and then they can post that question publicly and answer it. And that gets almost zero notes. Nobody, aside from the person that asked the question originally, nobody engages with that. So if you are on Tumblr, don't use it for public facing customer service because nobody cares, and nobody's going to interact with that comment.
Just avoid it. Nobody cares.
Somewhere in the corner be like, hey, if you've got a customer service thing, email me over here. Don't ask a question. I'm not going to post it. I'm not going to engage with it because it's useless. But the other thing that was interesting is more photos means more likes. So, not just posting a single photo, but posting galleries is actually going to increase the number of likes. And all the way up to essentially 10 photos in a post is still going to have an above average number of engagement. So, really interesting that it's not just one shot, hey, let's post one photo, quick hit type stuff. You can actually post galleries and additional photo content into one post and still have it get a really strong engagement, which I thought was interesting. And then finally looked at tags and found that some tags are better than others. So things like GIFs, reblog, video, that all gets positive engagement. And then things like model, photography, me, personal, that all gets negative sort of engagement on the Tumblr ecosystem. So GIFs, we've talked about it before, extremely popular on Tumblr.
So if you're saying if I were to tag it with me, photography, model, it wouldn't just suddenly explode with engagement, is what you're saying?
Exactly. If you do a modeling shoot and tag it as, hey, me, check out my photography, I'm modeling, that's going to be below average, but it's not.
That works when I do that on Instagram. When I put that hashtag for my photos on Instagram, that works.
I was going to say, don't feel bad. You're not alone. There's plenty of other people also tagging things as modeling and photography. So, overall, I think the takeaway from this is if you're going to be using Tumblr, make sure to kind of remind yourself that photography works really well. Animated GIFs work really well. Don't be afraid to post multiple photos into a single update. So if you go out, do a gallery, share multiple things, that's going to work. And that's, essentially kind of how to game the system. Tumblr is a very visual medium. Photos and that sort of update is the type of content that works well.
If you want to see some examples and stuff, take a look at something like Coke. Coke has, and I don't remember exactly what the name of it is. They had a sort of a branded name for their Tumblr blog. But they had, it's just filled with all kinds of different stuff, everything from animated GIFs to, little messages and quotes that they've created for themselves, throwbacks and holiday related stuff. They sort of show you, how to get things done the visual way on Tumblr.
Yeah, that's actually a great example. I don't know if they would call it this. The name at the top of their Tumblr is Where Happiness Lives Online.
That's what it is. Yeah.
It's basically coca-cola.tumblr.com. But they've done really well with creating content that's sort of this Tumblr style. And it's hard to describe. I think it's one of those things where, you use Tumblr for a while and eventually you just sort of get it. But it's this quirky GIF, this animation, a lot of things that are kind of funny, kind of meme-based, maybe looks a little old school or a little, weird, but hey, if that's what works, then that's what you've got to do.
And it's like the usual stuff with high pass-along effect, right? And sort of the younger crowd a bit usually. It skews a little bit younger in most cases.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to describe it. So we're going to return to Tumblr a little bit later, but for now, let's actually dive into our main topic, which is talking about verified accounts. And the reason that this came up is Facebook today announced the sort of gradual rollout of verified pages. And this is for celebrities and well-known online personalities and media people and brands, that whole thing. And as with a lot of these, it's sort of like a mystery. A bunch of people just randomly post like, hey, I got verified. They didn't do anything to get verified. So who knows what Facebook actually does to, quote unquote, verify it. I always think that that's kind of a funny, murky process. But hey, at the very least, they're starting to verify accounts. And so, we should see this roll out to brands especially. And definitely, if you're a brand that's had issues in the past with people impersonating you, it seems like, maybe try to get in touch with Facebook and say, hey, can you guys verify me because I've had issues with this in the past. But Adam, maybe talk a little bit about, what people might be looking at verified accounts. What's the importance of verified accounts? And then, what are some of the dangers of not having a verification system in place that brands should be aware of?
Sure. And the thing sort of came to mind for me. I mean, verified accounts. I think they originated primarily with Tumblr. I mean, not Tumblr. Excuse me, Twitter. Right.
Yeah, that's
so they were the first social network to sort of say, look, we'll give you a little badge. We'll verify who you are and give you sort of this official badge so that when celebrities get on here, and I think they obviously did it as a way to really push celebrities to have a voice on Twitter early on. They wanted folks to feel sort of safe with their personal brand, that there wasn't going to be people hijacking it. If there was, that they could clearly tell the difference between whether they were verified by Google as really being that celebrity or that, high level influencer or something like that, or even probably, I can't remember if they do it for brands as well, right? They should do that for major brands, I think. But at any rate, one of the things that I've been finding interesting lately, and I've sort of been observing this, is on Instagram specifically, I'm seeing a lot of folks, and I'll call it out. So I'll call out the first account that I've seen it on so that everybody can sort of see the example of what I mean. But the Will Ferrell account on Instagram, and I think it's like I am Will Ferrell or I Will Ferrell. I didn't open up my Instagram account to look at it at the moment, but what they've got going on is every single post on that account it's not a photo of Will Ferrell hanging out with his friends. It's not something that looks like it was shot from his camera on his phone and posted to Instagram. It's usually screen captures from a movie he was in. It's sort of as, under the guise that it's a photo of Will Ferrell, which it's not, or screen captures of tweets, because I believe Will Ferrell is actually really active on Twitter, and so screen captures of his tweets and just random stuff taken from real areas where Will Ferrell is active online, primarily Twitter, and then, celebrity photos taken from Google image search or whatever like that. But that's not terrible. But what's terrible now is that in this profile, they're actually linking directly back to a place to pay to get followers on Instagram. And then they're using, I believe there's in the hundreds of thousands of followers range following this account.
There's actually 700,000 followers. I just clicked over. It's 700,010 followers with 1,400 photos posted, and it's following 621 people. The name is Ferrell Will, so they just took his name and swapped it around.
And so what's happening is they have this link in the profile going back to this essentially spammy pay for follower site, and then every once in a while they'll also post content, and then most of the time, whatever the comment is underneath the photo always has an opportunity to be off brand or to be off Will Ferrell's brand, or be saying something that Will Ferrell's not saying, but still have people are still under the assumption that it's Will Ferrell that's posting these photos. And so in many, many cases, you'll see, like I saw one time where they said, hey, follow my buddy, which is a common thing. It's a shout out on Instagram where not only are you putting a photo, but in the caption itself, you're actually mentioning another person and saying, hey, you should go check this person's photos out or follow them or whatever. And it's happened numerous times, including one time where the person was telling folks to go follow a medical marijuana, I don't know if it was medical or not, but a marijuana grower that was on Instagram that was showing off their product and had an online store and all this sort of thing. So suddenly you've got Will Ferrell endorsing the sale of marijuana or endorsing this individual who was selling marijuana and showing photos of it. And you saw a huge amount of folks in the comments suddenly go, what are you doing, Will? Why are you endorsing these guys? I'm not going to follow you anymore. I'm unfollowing you now. I think there were a lot of young folks that were there that didn't feel comfortable suddenly having this feeling that Will Ferrell was endorsing this, in a way. And the other strategy real quick is also that they will start other accounts that might appeal to other groups of individuals. So, for instance, Will Ferrell might appeal to one person, but somebody like Cat Stevens might appeal to somebody else who's also a comedian, and some other movie stars I've seen like Mila Kunis and some other ones who are having the same issue. So what happens is they sort of try to get as many people to follow as many of those celebrity accounts as possible. They continue to expose people to essentially these caption ads of saying, go follow these guys, check out this, check out that, and push people to go check out their profile and click on their links and say, look, the first 100 people who follow my who click on my website link will get a shout out from me. And a lot of people are dying for that attention. So they go and they click that, in the end, it's not really Will Ferrell. It's not really any of these celebrities. And I don't know if folks like Will Ferrell have any idea that on Instagram somebody is doing that. And so that's a real serious issue.
As a brand, then, what are the steps that you would take? Let's say you were Will Ferrell's sort of PR manager. What are the steps that you would take to combat this account impersonation, or just, even having people sort of acting on your behalf and kind of pointing people in directions that maybe you don't want associated with your own brand?
Well, I mean, a couple things. One is I would initially go to a website like namecheck.com, which is actually namechk.com. There's also another one called Knowem, at KNOWEM.com. And those will help you check your usernames across the entire web on sites that you've heard of and many, many that you've never heard of before as well. And so you can take a look and see which of those sites should you at least shore up squatting on the name. Where are there sites where maybe somebody squatted on your name already, maybe even deviations of your name. But once you find that if you're not able to squat on those names yourself because somebody else has done it, then I really recommend contacting those networks. Most of the time, if you are an influencer of some stature, if you're a celebrity, if you're a brand that has some proof, you can likely get them to help you out, especially with somebody who already has a verified account system like Twitter. And, we just announced that Facebook has started doing the same for a lot of people, which I think is really smart. And I think any of the big networks like Instagram, for instance, as well, should be doing the same. So those are the steps I would take, is to double check, squat on the things that you should be squatting on, take a look at derivations of the name. If you have any merit in sort of grabbing that, then do so, at least to lock it down, and then contact the social networks to see whether they have some sort of verified program or can help you claim your name elsewhere on their networks.
Yeah, very true, very true. And I think, one thing to keep in mind is that anybody big enough to be impersonated and actually get a following on an impersonation account is probably big enough to contact the network itself and say, hey, look, like, I'm Coca-Cola, or I'm some sort of brand name, and this account is obviously not representing my own brand, so, I have a trademark complaint. Or if it's an individual, you can say, hey, somebody's obviously using this for not good purposes, so I'd like to talk about how to get this shut down, that sort of thing. I think the other sort of active step you can take is something like Instagram is a little tricky because they haven't really put process in place to say, hey, if somebody is impersonating your account, here's where to complain. Because it seems like something like this with 700,000 people that are following a fake account, that's crazy. And it's not even a fake account that looks remotely real. It's got pointing at this like WeDoFollowers.com. So whoever thinks that Will Ferrell is like a shill for We Do Followers, not the sharpest tool in the shed. But that aside, like 700,000 people are following a fake account. So obviously they need some sort of process in place to send your complaint and be like, look, something's gone wrong here. But assuming something like an Instagram, before you can even put that in place, I think this is why it's important for brands to have an official page that all of their other accounts link to, that's basically a self-verification system. So if you've got a Twitter account, the URL for that points back to, we'll stick with Coca-Cola, coca-cola.com/social or something along those lines. And then on that page, it says, hey, welcome to the official area of Coca-Cola's social media presence. Below are links to all of our official channels. If it's not linked here, it's not official. And basically, doing whatever you can to say, these are the channels that we support. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on Tumblr, but we are not on Vine. So if you see us on Vine, it's not us, it's somebody impersonating us. And that way, at least you've put that information out there and other people can hopefully vouch for you. So when, everybody's talking around the water cooler and you're like, oh, did you see that crazy photo that Will Ferrell posted on Instagram? Somebody can be like, actually, that's not him. I saw on his official page that he said that, he's not on Instagram. He specifically hasn't joined that channel yet. So yeah, that was a funny thing, but it wasn't posted by him. And, you should probably unfollow that account. It's not a flawless system. It's not a foolproof plan, but it's at least something you can do to get the proper information out there and let people do some of that work for you to spread, the knowledge that there are fake accounts that are impersonating your brand.
What do you think are the downsides at all, Corey, about folks getting their account taken? I mean, you have something like that where a bunch of people are following Will Ferrell and they're linking someplace else. So what? What's the big deal?
The big deal is that it hurts your brand. So again, you talked about Will Ferrell. The person who's impersonating him is pointing to marijuana websites and this We Do Followers thing, which I'm sure is total spam and, does all sorts of crazy things that aren't allowed. And it also, these are 700,000 people that at some point are going to come to the kind of sad realization that they're following a fake account, and it's going to make them less likely to follow a real account or sort of more, hesitant to follow other celebrities in the future because they'll feel like, oh, well, I got screwed over by this guy that was obviously just pulling my chain. So, when Will Ferrell or when somebody else actually does appear and actually does try to use this channel, they're more likely to be skeptical of that future interaction as well. So I think, unfortunately, there isn't a lot you can do. You kind of have to wait for Instagram to put a process in place to report these types of accounts and get them shut down. But this is, why most of the major networks have this process in place, or at least have some way of emailing somebody and saying, look, this is, 700,000 people are being led astray. Let's fix this together. Let's shut this down. Let's shut this account down, or let's move these followers into the actual Will Ferrell account so that they're not being duped, something like that. Because what's crazy is, it's not just 700,000 people. There's like tens of thousands of people that interact with every single post. So he's posting things like, May 29th, this is today, he posted something called the Walmart game, and it got 4,000 comments on it and 13.6 thousand likes. So people are actually interacting with this fake account. And
that's what I'm saying.
The interaction, it sort of builds upon itself. So people figure, okay, well, 4,000 other people commented, obviously this must be a real account, and it sort of perpetuates the lie. So, it's frustrating. I'd imagine with Instagram getting purchased by Facebook that they'll put a process in place or just kind of glue it onto their existing verification system. But there's not a lot you can do other than just, like I said, trying to put the correct information out there and let people who actually want to go out and say, hey, this doesn't feel quite right. Let me Google around and see if Will Ferrell has said anything about announcing an official Instagram presence, that they can find the correct location and, sort of unfollow or do whatever they see fit once they know that this isn't the actual person or thing that they think they're following.
Yep.
All right, Adam. So, you know what time it is. The lightning round time.
Boom, kapow, zap.
Boom, kapow, zap. All right. So, we've got 3 lightning round stories for today, which should make it a good one. And I've got 60 seconds on the clock for the first story. So what do you say we dive right in?
All right.
All right. Ready and go. So our first story is an interesting announcement coming out of Camp Twitter. And it is the introduction of what they're calling the lead generation card. So Twitter card is essentially the, advanced tweet where you can click a tweet and it'll open up additional information. And what they're allowing certain brands to do is actually have a call to action inside of that expanded tweet. So you could do something like join a newsletter from within twitter.com without ever actually leaving that experience. This obviously has huge implications for brands. There's a bunch of things that you're sort of like, oh, if only I could get people to, join my mailing list or follow me here or do some sort of action. But until this announcement, you had to send them to a third-party website. So with this, You can do it all within Twitter. It's only available for big brands right now. They're sort of testing it out, but they did say that they're working to eventually roll it out to small and medium-sized businesses as well, which I think would be nice. All right, Adam, 60 seconds on the clock. What's your take on the Twitter call to action card? Ready and go.
So this is the sweetness right here. It's really interesting to see Twitter sort of take advantage of their content cards and some other things they've been doing lately. I'm trying to remember the other thing that was launched last week as well that we may or may not have talked about last episode. But I mean, this is a list builder right here, right? Or this is something that you might use for traditional email marketing where you opt in for something. So you want to download our white paper? Here you go. Click this and we'll send it to you. All those things that you're already trying to get people to come to your site and do, there's the potential to make it that much easier since it's already got your email address. So the example they have here is like to join this coffee club daily deals thing. So if you're able to do that directly from within Twitter just by clicking that button, I mean, that's a pretty big deal. And it's a big play for Twitter themselves to show value for businesses.
All right at the buzzer. Well done, well done. All right, 60 seconds on the clock. Let's dive into story number 2. Ready and go. So, Pinterest, speaking of new features coming out from major social networks, Pinterest has announced rich pins, which, despite my earlier joke in the episode, does not mean valuable pins. It actually means additional data connected to pins. So their initial rollout are rich pins for products, recipes, and movies, I believe. And what's nice about this is essentially it's very similar to Facebook's Open Graph tags. You can add very simple HTML tags to your websites, and it's going to automatically pull in data into Pinterest. But what's really interesting is for something like products, you can do things like live updated pricing. So we've talked in the past about how important showing pricing is on Pinterest, actually getting people to click. Well, now instead of waiting for users to include pricing data, you can just import that into Pinterest when somebody pins from your own website. So I think this has huge potential, and I'm excited to see Pinterest adding features like this into their network. All right, Adam, 60 seconds on the clock. What do you think? Pinterest reach pins, boom or bust? Ready and go.
So I the only one that I sort of called the question is the recipe one. I think that's obviously a big, it's hugely popular on Pinterest, and it's a big win for the users. I don't know if there's any sort of way for them to monetize it. I didn't see if they, for instance, lead directly to some of these home and garden publications and some of these other ones that are, would obviously want to drive some eyeballs over there. I mean, I think this is interesting, and Pinterest is doing it much quicker than I think a lot of these other networks have in regards to sort of creating customized content. Twitter, as we talked about with their content cards, has done that, and they did that after many years. So Pinterest is sort of early to the party. Not early, but they're well timed. And when their API comes out as well, I think we'll also see an explosion on Pinterest right now. But this is all good stuff.
Yeah, the product one is cool. I forgot the other thing. In addition to price, you can actually include whether your product is in or out of stock. So it basically turns Pinterest into a virtual storeroom. And we've talked before about, Pinterest is great for shopping, and people sort of click through and do a lot of shopping through Pinterest. Now they're literally shopping through Pinterest. They're seeing up-to-date pricing. They're seeing whether it's in stock. They're seeing exactly where they can buy it from. And, they're clicking on it to kind of visit your website from that pin. It's because they're informed and they're thinking to themselves, all right, well, now I have all the information I need. I'm ready to buy. I know it's in stock. Let's make this thing happen. So
And just a note to what you were saying too is it makes a huge difference when somebody just pins a graphic and they don't really have any clue, any information beyond that, and then that graphic itself sort of becomes a pin unto itself that never changes, right? When you have this metadata associated with it and you're in control of it, all you do is change the metadata and it makes it accurate across every instance of that pin online, which makes a huge difference.
Yes, indeed. All right, 60 seconds back on the clock for our last lightning round topic of the day. Ready and go. So speaking of buying things, Yahoo put down a nice $1.1 billion to pick up a little-known social network called Tumblr. Tumblr selling out to Yahoo. You know, the speculation is that they needed to figure out a way of making money. Yahoo needed a way of figuring out how to be cool, so it was a match made in heaven. The announcement post, Yahoo said, "We promise not to screw it up." That was a direct quote from Marissa Mayer, which I think is a very funny way of putting it. But, you know, I'm sort of positive on this thing. I think that Tumblr, if they do it right, it can continue to grow, can continue to thrive, and Yahoo can figure out how to make money on it in a smart way. Yahoo's definitely going to be integrating advertising into it. So if you were a brand that was like, you know, I really wish I could reach this Tumblr audience, but there's just no good advertising opportunities, give yourself 3 months and that problem should be fixed. The challenge you're going to have to overcome is the porn problem, where there's a lot of adult content on Tumblr that you don't want your ad serving next to, but I think Yahoo will figure that out. All right, Adam, 60 seconds on the clock. What's your take on Yahoo's purchase of Tumblr? Ready and go.
So Yahoo's really been playing their hand lately. I actually happen to be a fan of Marissa Mayer and think that she'll do some good things with Yahoo, which she has so far quickly. And so in addition to the Tumblr acquisition, they announced the acquisition, or not the, excuse me, the expansion of Flickr, the whole new interface, and giving a ton of additional space to folks. And we talked about this last episode, but I think what they're doing, and I'm not a huge fan of always monetizing by just simply putting ads in front of people's faces, but it seems like that's what they're doing, is they're just going big on anything that they think is going to bring eyeballs to them and be unique for them. And so Tumblr, as well as and Tumblr also has had an issue with trying to find a way to monetize. So it's almost like a perfect marriage in that sense, that if they find a way to put ads in there nicely, then they're going to finally monetize it. So I think that that's what they're doing. Yahoo's going to continue to buy things that they can monetize by putting ads on it, and that's just the way it is.
With 2 seconds to go, you filled your time nicely. All right, well, a lot of great stuff this week, and as always, plenty more to think about as these stories unfold. But hey, if you listened to this episode and thought to yourself, you know, I've got a great question that I want to ask these guys, or maybe I've got a suggestion for next week's topic, or some feedback about something we covered, or hey, even if you just want to say hi, we highly encourage you to do so. The easiest way to get in touch with us is via Twitter. We are both available at SoLoMo Show, or you can reach myself directly. I'm at Corey O'Brien.
And I'm at Secret Sushi. You can also email us. We both check that from time to time. Our email is solomoshow@gmail.com. That's SoLoMoshow@gmail.com. We also have a Facebook page where we share things that don't always make the show, but sometimes do. So if you want to sort of engage with us there and see what we got going on between shows, please do. Also on Google+, and we do have a Pinterest account where we have most of our previous shows in our YouTube format on there, because you can pin YouTube videos there. And so go ahead and check it out. Maybe they'll do some rich pins for podcasts. You never know. So there you go.
All right, and as always, all of the links that we discussed today, as well as links to the social channels that we just mentioned, can be found in the show notes, which, if you're wondering to yourself, where can I find those show notes? They're available at solomoshow.com. So each episode gets its own post. It includes both links to the stories that we discussed, as well as supplementary links. So if you were interested by one of the topics we covered and want to dive a little deeper on your own, we definitely encourage you to do that, which is why we have created the show notes. So again, visit solomoshow.com, click around, dive a little deeper, and hopefully that is a great resource if one of these stories piqued your interest. And with that, we will call this episode a wrap, but we hope you join us next week for another great episode of The SoLoMo Show.
Take care.